At this moment, Raper was briefly distracted from the fight, which is why the huge chicken was able to successfully attack Raper. At the moment of the fall, the attacked Raper straightened his arm, raised his thumb up and told Hander that he was doing well, since he was able to distract the chicken on himself. This angered Blog even more, and he told Raper and Hander that instead of trying to protect him, they should concentrate on the battle. As Raper fell to the ground, Hander told Raper that Blog was paying attention to them after all, and Raper gave him his thumbs up again. Soon the chicken was about to attack Hander, and then Hander told the Blog to run away as quickly as possible, since he believed that he and Raper would not be able to defeat this chicken. However, Blog believed that he was unlikely to be able to outrun the chicken in time, and that he would definitely not be able to escape, but the goblins behind said that they could not give up so easily. At this point, the ghouls began to gather in a large pyramid, thereby creating a massive array of unified support. The chickens began to try to demolish the large pyramid of ghouls, but the ghouls still continued to withstand all the blows. The ghouls continued to withstand all the blows of the chickens and hoped that very soon Yuhan would be here and help them. Over time, the blows of the chickens became even stronger, and it was already extremely difficult for the ghouls to withstand these blows. After some time, the giant chicken struck the pyramid of ghouls with such a strong blow that the pyramid of ghouls simply collapsed. Many ghouls fell to the ground and were badly injured, and in this state they could not continue to fight. At that moment, the giant chicken prepared to deal a decisive blow to the ghouls, and the ghouls could not resist it in any way. However, a second later the ghouls saw something fall from the sky onto the chicken, which immediately killed the chicken. At this moment, the ghouls were incredibly happy that Yuhan had finally arrived here to help them. However, at that moment, the old ghoul lord came out of the smoke, increased the weight of his arm with the help of his skills and finished off the giant chicken. A couple of seconds after the ghouls saw the old ghoul lord, something else fell to the ground. This time, the ghouls saw how Yuhan made a slight mistake with the trajectory of his flight, and landed a little further than his target. After a couple of seconds, the giant chickens arrived at the old ghoul lord and surrounded him. At that moment, the old ghoul lord began to show all his fearlessness in front of the chickens. Blog looked at the old ghoul lord and thought that he was the leader of the ghouls since he was able to deal with one of the chickens so easily. Then one of the ghouls approached Blog and told him that this ghoul, who was able to defeat one of the chickens, was their former lord. With each passing second, more and more chickens began to approach the old ghoul lord, which made him very scared. At this moment, the rest of the ghouls were watching the old ghoul lord and hoping that he must have some kind of plan. The old ghoul lord told the other ghouls that he actually had a plan to defeat all these chickens. A second later, the old ghoul lord knelt down and began calling Yuhan for help as loudly as possible. While the old ghoul lord hoped that Yuhan would come to his call, the rest of the ghouls became extremely uncomfortable looking at their old lord's current situation. Every second the old ghoul lord became more and more afraid, and he did not know what he needed to do in this current situation. A few hours earlier, the old ghoul lord had woken up to find himself alone in the entire village, and he figured today's hunt was taking a little longer than usual. Suddenly the old ghoul lord felt a strong rumbling in his stomach, and he thought it would be a good idea to join in on today's hunt. Also, the old ghoul lord decided that the giant rooster had long ago fallen at the hands of Yuhan, and therefore there would be no threat to him on the way to today's hunting spot. 5 minutes before his arrival, the old ghoul lord heard the cries of the remaining ghouls who had gone out hunting today. At this moment, the old ghoul lord decided that he must help his subordinates as soon as possible. A couple of seconds later, the old ghoul lord found a large and heavy boulder nearby, which he was about to throw at the chickens. First, the old lord grabbed a large boulder and used his skill on it to reduce the weight of this stone tenfold. After that, the old ghoul lord easily threw the cobblestone into the sky, after which he returned the cobblestone to its original weight. Unlike the rest of the ghouls, the old lord did not train with Yuhan and did not develop his muscles. However, despite the fact that the old ghoul lord's physique remained virtually unchanged, he did not become weaker than the other ghouls. The thing was that during training, the old ghoul lord often used his weighting skill to weigh down the various objects that Yuhan trained with. Due to the constant use of his skill, the old ghoul lord's weighting skill level gradually increased, allowing him to reduce and increase the weight of objects even more. At the moment, the old ghoul lord couldn't even imagine how he could defeat a whole crowd of angry chickens single-handedly. Then one of the ghouls told his old lord that since he was able to defeat one of the chickens so easily, then perhaps he was as strong as Yuhan. At this moment, the old ghoul lord thought that in fact, few people would be able to deal with the giant chickens so easily. Also, the old ghoul lord thought that if he had been holding the title of ghoul lord since birth, it would even be ridiculous to compare his strength with the strength of his subjects. At this moment, the old ghoul lord was simply filled with confidence in his abilities, and he believed that if he tried a little, he could easily defeat the other chickens. However, within a second, one of the chickens hit the old ghoul lord with such force that the old ghoul lord simply flew high into the sky. The rest of the ghouls watched their former lord fly away somewhere far away, and thought that they definitely had no chance against these chickens. Meanwhile, Blog decided that this was the end of him, and then he apologized to Raper and Hender for not always laughing at their jokes. At the time, Raper and Hender told the Blog that they never joked, which made the current situation even more depressing. However, Blog was still confident that Raper and Hender continued to joke, after which he thanked them for everything they did for him. After that, Blog took out his sword and shield and said that he was not going to die alone, since he had ghouls with him, whom he had already begun to consider his friends. Then the ghouls also prepared for the fact that they would have to fight, despite the fact that at the moment the chances were high that they could die today. After this, the ghouls rushed to attack the chickens, mentally thanking Yuhan for all his training. The ghouls were confident that it was thanks to Yuhan's grueling training that they became so strong. The ghouls looked at the knights and thought that despite their training, they never managed to become truly strong. The ghouls also thought that if rebirth was possible, then in the next life they would also like to train with Yuhan. By that time, the old ghoul lord had managed to land in the same place where Yuhan had landed. The exhausted old ghoul lord begged Yuhan to save the rest of the ghouls. At this moment, Yuhan decided to use the call of his pectoral muscles to direct all the chickens towards himself. Meanwhile, the ghouls just started trying to attack the giant chickens. However, during the attack of the ghouls, the chickens only ran around them and headed in one direction. The ghouls did not understand where the chickens ran, and then they decided to follow them. Meanwhile, Yuhan continued to use the pectoral call until the chickens came running to him. Soon, all the chickens came running to Yuhan, and then Yuhan activated his composure skill. After activating the composure skill, Yuhan began to feel how he was filled with a previously unknown power, and how an incomprehensible calmness enveloped him. Meanwhile, the ghouls, together with the knights, headed in the same direction where the chickens ran. Soon the ghouls felt the power of the call of the pectoral muscles, and then they decided that Yuhan had deliberately used this technique to direct all the chickens to himself. At this moment, Blog did not understand what these ghouls were talking about and who Yunao was. Then one of the ghouls told the Blog that Yuhan's soul is their mentor and the best muscle training master. Blog still didn't fully understand who Yuhan really was, and this ghoul told Blog that he would understand everything when he saw Yuhan in person. Then one of the ghouls said that this explanation was indeed not intelligible and understandable enough, and he asked his comrade to tell the Blog more about Yuhan. However, the ghoul added in his explanation that Yuhan's soul was their new lord, but the Blog still did not understand who Yuhan was. Meanwhile, the chickens had already reached Yuhan and were preparing to attack him. However, Yuhan manages to use the moves from the one-arm press, which allowed Yuhan to disarm one of the chickens. Yuhan's blow was so strong that he managed to send the attacked chicken high into the sky. After such a powerful blow from Yuhan, the two closest chickens jumped up, which made it seem that these chickens were simply scared and decided to retreat. However, as they jumped, the hens turned towards each other, feet first, and grabbed each other's legs. Thanks to this grip, the chickens were able to double the force of their punch and land directly on Yuhan. Despite such a strong blow, Yuhan was able to withstand such a blow and prepared to strike back. After this, Yuhan decided to use the military press technique to try to free himself from under the giant chicken paws. However, at the same second, several more chickens also began to try to pin Yuhan to the ground with their paws. After a couple of seconds, the chickens managed to pin Yuhan to the ground again in the hope that he would no longer be able to attack them in any way. Then Yuhanu applied a bench press schwung, thanks to which he was able to break through giant chicken feet. After that, Yuhan grabbed the toes of one of the chickens, swung his arms as hard as possible, and flew towards the chicken's head as quickly as possible. During the flight, Yuhan performed a flip in the air, thanks to which he was able to deliver a serious blow to the face of one of the chickens. Yuhan's blow was so powerful that the chicken was unable to get up and continue fighting. After delivering the blow, Yuhan said that he specifically used the pectoral call to call all the chickens to him and defeat them all alone. Yuhan also said that with his pectoral calls, he was able to easily touch the chickens' souls, and he wondered if they could do the same to him. After that, Yuhan performed a burpee test, after completing which he gained speed and struck another chicken with a strong blow. After that, Yuhan stuck his hands as deep underground as possible while the chickens were distracted by the lifeless body of one of the chickens. After that, Yuhan suddenly raised his hands from under the ground, causing a very powerful shock pulse to start running across the ground. Yuhan's shock wave was so powerful that all the chickens within a radius of several tens of meters immediately found themselves in the air. Before the chickens had time to rise to their feet again, Yuhan pulled one of the trees out of the ground and prepared to perform jump squats. After several repetitions, Yuhan began to throw a huge and heavy log from one chicken to another, parallel with this log from one chicken to another. After a few seconds, Yuhan jumped as high as possible and prepared to perform one repetition of the triceps strengthening exercise. After the first repetition, Yuhan threw this log at the head of one of the chickens, causing it to fall to the ground and stop showing any signs of life. By this time, the ghouls had already arrived at the battle site along with the knights. The blog looked at Yuhan and did not understand how it was possible that a person could be a ghoul lord. The blog also thought that Yuhan could not be human, since he possessed such power that no human could control it. Meanwhile, Yuhan was thinking that during the time it took him to get here, his legs were very tired. Then Yuhan began to be haunted by doubts about his ability to complete this battle. However, Yuhan believed that if he gave up, he would no longer be able to look into the eyes of the old ghoul lord who had repeatedly helped him in every training session. Then Yuhan decided that in this case he would have to finish this battle with one strong blow. Yuhan then decided to perform one rep of the chest press and would have to increase the size of his muscles to achieve maximum punching power. At this moment, Yuhan activated his accelerated muscle recovery skill. But even so, Yuhan's legs could barely support his entire upper body stably. With each passing second, all the muscles in Yuhan's upper body, including his pectoral muscles, became larger, attracting more and more chickens. At this moment, Yuhan began to feel several hands touching his back. Yuhan looked back and saw how all the ghouls, along with the knights, began to support him. While the ghouls and knights supported Yuhan, Yuhan performed one repetition of the chest press, which caused a powerful shockwave. Yuhan's shockwave was powerful enough to defeat all the chickens at once. After all the chickens were neutralized, Yuhan, along with the ghouls and knights, fell to the ground from fatigue. At this moment, Yuhan was thinking about how they would never see the old lord again, and Yuhan told the ghouls that he would miss their old lord. The ghouls were discussing that before Yuhan came, their old lord was very evil, and after Yuhan came to their village, their old lord became a good leader. Suddenly, at one moment, Yuhan thought that since the old ghoul lord was no longer there, someone else would have to help him with his training. Yuhan then looked at the ghouls, but the ghouls made it clear that they did not want to help Yuhan, and then Yuhan called the ghouls traitors. While Yuhan promised to take revenge on the ghouls with the most brutal training, the old ghoul lord sat next to Yuhan and told him that he had done a good job. Only after a couple of seconds did Yuhan and the ghouls noticed that the old ghoul lord was still alive. The old ghoul lord didn't understand why everyone started looking at him with such surprise, and he said that he decided to take a little nap and not interfere in the battle. Yuhan and the ghouls were incredibly glad that their old lord was still alive. Yuhan and the ghouls immediately attacked the old ghoul lord in a crowd and began to hug him, and for a moment the old ghoul lord thought that in this way he could really be killed. Yuhan told the old ghoul lord that he was very glad that he was alive, and then Yuhan asked the old ghoul lord to continue helping him with his training. Soon the knights returned back to the county and reported everything to Count Huerdo and the captain of the knightly guard. The knights reported to Count Huerdo that it was Yuhan who defeated the giant rooster and helped them fight off the attack of the giant chickens. At this moment, Count Huerdo thought that the ghouls did not pose any threat to them, but Yuhan could turn out to be an extremely dangerous opponent. A little later, the captain of the knightly guard noticed that Blog had not returned, and she wanted to find out from the knights why he had not returned. At this moment, tears suddenly appeared under the eyes of Raper and Hander due to the fact that they were unable to return Blog. After Yuhan defeated all the chickens in the area, he immediately began to examine Blogga from all sides. This behavior of Yuhan did not please Raper and Handard, which is why they began to become very angry with Yuhan. After days, the drop for Raper and Handard was when Yuhan called Blog a thing, and then they decided to attack Yuhan. At this moment, Yuhan believed that Blog wanted to become stronger, and Blog wanted to warn Yuhan that Raper and Handard were going to attack him. At this moment, Yuhan stopped Raper and Handard's attack with his bare hands, and Yuhan asked Blog again if he wanted to become stronger. Yuhan then told Blog that if he did bodybuilding with him, he could become even stronger than his friends. The Blog listened to Yuhan and did not understand what Yuhan was even talking about, and what he meant by bodybuilding. Raper and Handard told the captain of the night guard that they had no choice but to leave Blogga with Yuhan. At that moment, Raper and Handard bowed down before the captain of the nightly guard and began to beg her to help them return Blog. Count Werdo believed that bodybuilding was a kind of black magic, and he believed that despite such a tragic loss of a knight, it would be too risky to try to resist Yuhan. Also, Count Werdo believed that the captain of the nightly guard was not so emotional as to succumb to feelings and go after the lost knight. However, at this moment, the captain of the nightly guard began to be overwhelmed with various emotions, and she ordered Raper and Handard to go right now to save Blog. Count Werdo wanted to tell the captain of the nightly guard that she should not give in to her emotions, but the captain of the guard no longer listened to Count Werdo. The guard captain said that Yuhan had captured her student, and that this was already crossing all acceptable boundaries. The guard captain believed that today they needed to restore order in the alley mines, and Raper and Handard were very glad that the guard captain decided to help them free their friend. The next day, Blog joined the ghoul village, and that same day, Blog prepared for his first training session. The first thing Yuhan wanted to do was show Blog how to do squats correctly, but Blog didn't know what they were. Yuhan assumed that Blog might not understand some of the things he was telling him, so he asked Blog to come to him to explain everything to him. When Blog approached Yuhan, Yuhan began to tell him what squats are and how to do them correctly. After that, Yuhan asked Blog to repeat the squat that he showed him, and then Yuhan realized that it was worth showing Blog how to do squats correctly. Yuhan also explained that while squatting, a person should simply sit down and stand up, repeating these actions in the correct position, so as not to accidentally get injured. After Blog stood up again, Yuhan asked him to spread his legs hip-width apart. Once the legs were positioned correctly, Blog had to point his knees slightly outward and sit up with the help of his pelvis and knees. After Blog has fixed his position, he needs to direct his forces into the pelvis and hips, after which he must push off the ground and stand in his original position. After performing the first squat, Yuhan praised Blog and felt that Blog had already practiced sports before, but Blog said that he had only practiced swordsmanship before. After a couple of seconds, Yuhan took out a barbell and asked Blog to try squatting with it. When Blog bent his knees, he stretched his arms up, after which Yuhan handed him a barbell and asked him to try with this barbell. The Blog took the heavy barbell in his hands and began to try to get it into the original position. Yuhan stood in front of Blog and made sure that Blog did not get out of position and stood on his feet from the correct position. After a few seconds, Blog still managed to successfully squat with the barbell in his hands. Yuhan then removed the bar while the ghouls praised Blog for his efforts. At this moment, Yuhan looked at Blog and was amazed that Blog could so easily perform squats with the maximum weight of the barbell and not even disturb his body position during the exercise. Yuhan then felt that he was indeed not mistaken and that Blog had enough potential to become as strong as him. A couple of minutes later, Yuhan asked Blog why he still agreed to follow him and start training. Then Blog told Yuhan that he wants to become as strong as Raper and Handard, who constantly protect him from all possible dangers. Yuhan then told Blog that he could hardly make himself as strong as his friends. Blog sadly told Yuhan that he was actually confident that a simple guy like him couldn't become as strong as Raper and Handard. However, despite all his self-doubt, Blog was still very grateful to Yuhan for offering to help him gain strength comparable to that of his friends. However, Yuhan told the Blog that he would become strong in a slightly different sense, and that he could acquire a strength that would be simply incomparable to that of his friends. Yuhan also told Blog that he has the most valuable talent that few people in this world can have. Blog was deeply touched by such words, since it was the first time someone praised him. Suddenly, Blog couldn't control his emotions, causing him to start crying, but Yuhan told Blog that he shouldn't cry as he believed that crying could negatively affect his future muscle development. The next morning, Yuhan and the ghouls went to their previous hunting ground to take several huge chicken chicks with them to the village. Yuhan told the old ghoul lord that these chickens can also be eaten, but if you cook and eat them all at once, their population may be greatly reduced. Yuhan also said that it is worth trying to breed these chickens at home, making it a kind of huge chicken farm. The old ghoul lord feared that when these chickens grew up, no one except Yuhan would be able to defeat them on their own so that they could then be cooked and eaten. Even though many ghouls had become even stronger, the old ghoul lord was afraid that if these chickens evolved, then no one except Yuhan would be able to handle them. At this moment, Yuhan noticed that the old ghoul lord was speaking like some kind of insecure weakling, and he began to look at the old ghoul lord with some degree of judgment. The old ghoul lord was very frightened by Yuhan's look, and then he said that they could still cope with these chickens, after which Yuhan immediately stopped showing his ominous gaze. After Yuhan and the ghouls took the chicks of the huge chickens, they began training, during which everyone squatted with heavy barbells. Blog also did barbell squats, but unlike the others, he was helped by the old ghoul lord. First, the old ghoul lord reduced the weight of Blog's barbell by 10 times so that he could prepare for the sudden increase in weight of the barbell. As soon as Blog started doing squats, the old ghoul lord immediately increased the weight of Blog's barbell to 2 times its original weight. With each repetition, Blog's barbell became heavier, but he still continued to perform squats and did not break the rhythm, despite the severe pain and the heavy weight of the barbell. Meanwhile, Yuhan and the rest of the ghouls also continued to perform barbell squats. The ghouls found it very difficult to continue holding the barbell, and each time they squatted slower. At one point, a strong shock pulse passed through the ground, which was caused by some stranger and thereby interrupted the training. Despite such a strong blow, all the ghouls survived and received virtually no serious injuries. At that moment, the captain of the nightly guard of the county of Werdo appeared before the old lord, and she asked the old lord if he had kidnapped her former student. The old ghoul lord thought that this was some kind of misunderstanding, and then he explained to the captain of the guard that for some time now he was not a ghoul lord. A second after the old ghoul lord responded, the captain of the guard told the old lord that he should have answered her yes or no, after which she readied her sword to get rid of the old lord. At the moment of impact, something prevented the captain of the guard from killing the old ghoul lord, which is why another shock wave appeared at the site of the impact. At the moment of impact, Yuhan covered the body of the old ghoul lord with his hand and asked the guard captain who she was and what she wanted. The guard captain thought that Yuhan was far from an ordinary person if he managed to survive after her blow. Meanwhile, Yuhan thought that the guard captain was extremely strong since she managed to leave a small scratch on his arm with her sword. After this, the captain of the guard put away her sword and asked Raper and Hendard if this was the man who took Blog from them. Raper and Hendard confirmed that it was Yuhan who took Blog with him. Also, Raper and Hendard saw Blog and began to beg him to leave the ghoul village and return back to them. The guard captain apologized to Yuhan for having to interrupt his training, after which she demanded Yuhan to return her student to her. Yuhan felt a little embarrassed by the current situation, and he told the Blog that it was extremely impolite to keep silent about the fact that he already had a coach, and even more so to leave her without warning. At this point, the Blog felt very ashamed of its recklessness, and it could not say anything in its own defense. Then Yuhan jokingly told Blog that recently training his muscles had become much more interesting to Blog than fencing. Blog felt very ashamed of his behavior, and then he began to apologize to the captain of the guard for deciding to quit fencing and start bodybuilding. Blog also told the captain of the guard that despite the fact that she had gone through such a difficult journey for him, he would like to continue to engage in bodybuilding. After a couple of seconds, the captain of the guard took out her sword and said that since her student made the wrong decision for himself, then she would have to resolve this issue by force. The captain of the guard was about to strike again with lightning speed, but this time Yuhan managed to parry her attack. The guard captain noticed that this time she managed to leave only a small scratch on Yuhan's body, and she told Yuhan that his actions greatly hurt her pride. Then the captain of the guard believed that Blog really wanted the same muscles as Yuhan, and Blog confirmed her theory. Then the captain of the guard suggested that Yuhan resolve all the issues in a duel, and whoever can win will continue to train Blog. The captain of the guard also said that it is the winner's martial art that will be able to show what kind of training can make Blog stronger. However, Yuhan explained to the guard captain that bodybuilding is not a martial art, but some form of self-education and overcoming the complexities of a person's own will. However, the captain of the guard reminded Yuhan that it was he who defeated the giant rooster, to which Yuhan said that he just needed to get food to survive in this world. Then the captain of the guard considered that since bodybuilding is not intended for combat, then there is no practical benefit from it. These words infuriated Yuhan very much, and he demanded that she take back her words. However, the guard captain realized that these words were starting to make Yuhan angry, and she continued to claim that bodybuilding was of no use. Finally, the captain of the guard told Yuhan that bodybuilding is complete nonsense, which is practiced only by those who simply have nowhere to spend their time. The guard captain's words infuriated Yuhan so much that he activated the leg-lengthening skill, and Yuhan demanded that the captain fight a battle to show her what real bodybuilding was. After some time, all the ghouls in the village gathered to watch Yuhan's fight with the guard captain, and they were wondering which of them would be stronger. One of the ghouls drew the attention of the others to such a noticeable difference in physical form, and they were confident that Yuhan would win without any problems. However, the blog told the ghouls that despite such a modest physique, the guard captain was one of the 10 strongest warriors on the continent. Before the battle began, Yuhan decided to use his hawk vision skill to assess the physical parameters of the guard captain. The hawk's vision showed Yuhan that the guard captain did not have as strong muscles as him, and then Yuhan could not understand how she was able to inflict such damage on him with such a physique. Suddenly the captain of the guard asked Yuhan what bodybuilding, which he is so actively involved in, is all about. Immediately after this, the guard captain jumped up and attacked Yuhan with one of his fighting techniques. Yuhan still couldn't understand what kind of power allowed her to use such powerful techniques. The guard captain told Yuhan that thanks to her combat energy, she could easily deal with her enemies with minimal effort. After that, the captain of the guard dealt Yuhan several more powerful blows, with which she was able to push Yuhan a short distance. After her blow, the guard captain wanted to tell Yuhan why she called him a foreigner, despite the fact that he looked like a man. However, Yuhan said that he didn't care what she called him, after which Yuhan was about to strike his first blow. The guard captain managed to dodge Yuhan's attack, after which she said that she saw that he was surrounded by scarlet mana. The captain of the guard also said that scarlet mana is possessed either by powerful demonic entities or unusual aliens. In addition, the captain of the guard believed that in battle Yuhan uses techniques such as increasing her size. After this, the guard captain was about to strike hard on the ground, hoping to hit Yuhan, but Yuhan managed to dodge her attack. Then Yuhan told the captain of the guard that his body could change due to the fact that he was making enormous efforts to do so. The guard captain felt that these words from Yuhan only confirmed her theory that Yuhan was either an alien or a demon in human form. The captain of the guard also said that ordinary people of this world can compensate for the limitations of their physical capabilities with combat energy, or mana. After this, the captain of the guard used a skill that creates many magical swords in the sky, which can themselves be directed towards her enemy. After a couple of seconds, these magic swords simultaneously headed straight towards Yuhan, who was very difficult to survive such a serious blow. After such an attack, Yuhan fell to the ground, and the guard captain said that bodybuilding could not surpass the strength of swordsmanship. However, Yuhan said that despite all the advantages of fencing, the enemy cannot stand still. Then Yuhan added that a person cannot know how strong today's opponent can become stronger tomorrow. However, the captain of the guard said that in this case she would be able to make sure that her current enemy simply did not live to see the next day. After this, Yuna immediately got into a double biceps pose, withstanding all subsequent attacks from the guard captain. At this moment, Yuhan said that everyone who goes to the gym becomes a better person than the person they were yesterday. At this moment, Yuhan's muscles began to grow at a rapid speed, causing the overall volume of his body to rapidly increase. In a couple of seconds, Yuhan became 10 times larger and stronger than an ordinary person, and this time the guard captain had practically no chance against such an opponent. Meanwhile, the blog continued to watch Yuhan's fight with the guard captain, and at one point Reaper and Hendard approached him. Reaper and Hendard apologized to the blog for bringing the guard captain with them to save him. Also, Reaper and Hendard were afraid that if they turned to the captain of the guard for help, the blog would begin to hate them both. However, the blog did not understand why Reaper and Hendard decided that he would hate them. Hendard then said that he and Reaper believed that he left them because they constantly put moral and psychological pressure on him. However, Blog immediately explained to Reaper and Hendard that he left because he simply wanted to pursue bodybuilding, after which he would immediately return back to the county. Hearing this, Raper and Hendard immediately calmed down and were glad that the blog was going to return to them. Raper and Hendard also told the blog that since he decided to train, they would like to start training with him. However, Blog himself did not fully understand what he could teach Raper and Hendard, and then he asked the old ghoul lord to help him train his friends. While Yuhan continued to fight with the guard captain, the old ghoul lord said that he would be happy to train new students. Before the training began, the blog wanted to start training Raper and Hendard the same way they once began their training with the captain of the guard. Raper thought that the blog was talking about leg training, and the blog confirmed his guesses. First, the blog spoke to Raper and Hendard about squats and how beneficial this exercise is for the hip muscles. While the blog was adding weight to the training bar, he was talking about Yuhan talking about how important it is to keep the correct posture while doing squats. The old ghoul lord watched as blog added weight to the barbell, and he believed that such a large weight might be too much for Raper and Hendard's first workout. However, Blog said that Raper and Hendard would be fine as he was going to give them support during the squats. Meanwhile, Yuhan still continued to fight with the guard captain, and during the battle, Yuhan began to count as if he was doing some kind of exercise. At some moments, Yuhan slightly weakened the strength of his movements, which caused the guard captain to pull Yuhan's hand away from him a little back. The guard captain noticed that Yuhan was cyclically strengthening and weakening his arm, and then she asked him why he was weakening his arm. However, Yuhan said that this was not a loosening, but a deliberate pulling of the arm towards the body as he performed squeezing and stretching of the arm muscles. Suddenly, the captain of the guard heard loud groans coming from the audience, which were very similar to the groans of Raper and Hendard. Meanwhile, Raper and Hendard continued to perform barbell squats, and then Yuhan left the battlefield and told everyone that he was also going to do some squats after Raper. The captain of the guard immediately became embarrassed when she saw how Raper and Hendard were training. Yuhanna explained to the guard captain that her knights were currently doing weight-bearing squats. The captain of the guards told Yuhanna with a perverted expression that now she also wants Raper and Hendard to continue bodybuilding. From these words, Yuhan returned to his normal state and asked the captain of the guard what she experienced when she saw her knights training. The captain of the guard said that at that moment she felt disproportionate passion, and that she liked to watch the sweat dripping from the muscles of Raper and Hendard. After these words, Yuhan and the guard captain shook hands and agreed that Yuhan could continue to train Blog. After the fight, Yuhan learned that the guard captain's name was Ryan, and when she mounted her horse, he noticed something unusual about her. Yuhan noticed how much Ryan's forearms were pumped up, and he wanted to ask her what sport she did to pump them up so much. Ryan thought that Yuhan was just joking, but Yuhan was actually curious to know how she had built up such powerful forearms. Ryan then said that she constantly swings her sword, and she assumed that it was because of this that her forearms became stronger, but she was also curious to know what Yuhan thought about it. Ryan also thought about the fact that Yuhan trains everyone for practically nothing, and then she asked him what she could do for him to repay him for his efforts. However, Yuhan said that he had not thought about it at all, and he believed that the more people knew about his training, the better. Afterwards, Yuhan, along with Ryan and the rest of the humans and ghouls, went to Weirdo County, and Ryan became curious as to why Yuhan thought that people might be interested in his training. Yuhan believed that the more people learned about his training, the faster various gyms would begin to appear, and over time, people would create their own training programs. Yuhan also wanted people around the Lesha world to become interested in the idea of pumping and improving their body. Ryan found Yuhan's idea very interesting and worthy, and she said that she would be able to listen to any of his requests, which suited Yuhan very much. Soon evening came, and Yuhan and everyone else decided to take a break. Suddenly something began to bother Blog very much, and he decided to tell Yuhan about it. The blog said there is a lot of discrimination in Weirdo County. Weirdo County, this discrimination manifested itself not only between representatives of different species, but also between representatives of different types of magic, religion, and other factors. The blog worried about the fact that some people could dominate not only monsters, but also other people who were different from them. Blog was also afraid that upon arriving in Weirdo County, people would definitely try to hurt the feelings of Yuhan and his ghouls. Yuhan listened to the blog and felt that this was indeed a serious problem for him and his ghouls. The blog then felt it was necessary to wait a little before heading to Wedo County. After a couple of seconds, blog watched as Yuhan headed towards the horses. After another couple of seconds, Yuhan began to eat the horse feed from their trough in all seriousness. Even though Yuhan looked a little strange from the outside, he only enjoyed the roughness and hardness of the food, as he believed that this particular food was good for maintaining human health. This very food for maintaining health turned out to be ordinary oats, since oats contained a lot of carbohydrates. However, Yuhan was somewhat upset that oats in this world were only used as horse feed, and he decided that he should solve this problem as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the rest of the people looked at Yuhan eating horse feed, thinking that Yuhan was just another barbarian who didn't care about what he had. Then one of the knights of Wedo County said that Yuhan was just another monster who didn't know much about food. Then the old ghoul lord approached these people and told these knights that if the monsters heard such words from them, they would be very upset. After this, the old ghoul lord handed these knights a bowl of his food and said that he tried to combine the knights' war provisions with the normal hive food, and he wanted the knights to try his dish. The knights could not believe that some ghoul was able to combine their provisions with his food, and they decided to try this dish, since its smell was very tempting. As soon as the knights tasted the old ghoul lord's dish, a real explosion of flavors occurred in their mouths. The knights really liked how the sweetish taste of this dish revealed a very pleasant spiciness. The knights also liked the texture of various spices and the successful combination of products. The old ghoul lord said that if ghouls and humans lived in peace and harmony, he would be happy to share the recipe for this dish, and the knights promised that now they would be more friendly towards ghouls. After some time, Yuhan decided to turn to Ryan, and she said that they would continue their journey tomorrow morning, after which she wanted to listen to Yuhan. Yuhan reminded Ryan of her words that she promised to fulfill any of her requests, and Ryan became interested in what Yuhan would ask of her. Yuhan then held out a small pile of oat grains and said that he would like these grains to be provided to him and his ghouls. At that moment, Ryan remembered that Yuhan and his ghouls were raising chickens, and she believed that Yuhan wanted to feed the chickens with these grains. However, Yuhan said with a smile on his face that he and his ghouls would feed on these grains themselves. Ryan then said that if she really gave Yuhan and his ghouls these grains, then she would feel guilty for actually giving them cattle feed. The ghouls also told Yuhan that Ryan had great influence among people, and they believed that such a unique opportunity should not be used to obtain ordinary livestock feed. Yuhan was greatly angered by the ghouls' words, and then he demanded that the ghouls repeat what they had just said. Ryan said that she kind of agreed with the ghouls' words, since she could do something more for Yuhan and his ghouls. Ryan said that she could easily give the ghouls adventure armor and build each ghoul a good, durable wooden house. The ghouls also believed that they already had a lot of chicken meat, which was probably many times more nutritious than regular livestock feed. Then Yuhan said that if you only consume the protein contained in chicken meat, it can negatively affect the liver. Yuhan also explained that if you consume enough carbohydrates, the body will release glycogen, which also has many beneficial properties for the body. Yuhan also said that oats contain many different carbohydrates, which take a long time to be absorbed by the body, which is why the feeling of fullness lasts longer. In addition, Yuhan said that due to its low calorie content and high nutrient content in his world, oats received the title of the king of all grains. After Yuhan's story, the ghouls immediately wanted to start eating oats to increase glycogen levels in the body. The knights found this all a bit strange, and they assumed that Yuhan wanted to become stronger than the captain of their guard. Then the knights decided that in order not to lose any advantage over ghouls and other monsters, they should also try livestock feed. At this point, Blog had already begun to actively eat oats, and Raper and Hander decided that if Blog decided to eat these oats, then they should try it too. After a couple of seconds, everyone began to unanimously try oats to understand how healthy they could actually be. However, after a second, everyone realized how disgusting the oats tasted, which is why everyone immediately spat out all the oats. However, despite the fact that no one liked the taste of oats, the Blog still continued to happily eat oats without stopping. Raper noticed that Blog continued to eat oats, and he told him that he should stop eating because the oats just tasted disgusting. However, Blog told Raper that he liked the toughness and taste of oats, after which he continued eating, which surprised everyone. Even Yuhan was amazed at how happily Blog ate oats, and he believed that with such an appetite, Blog could build strong muscles very quickly. At this point, Ryan told Yuhan that even though she didn't understand much of his explanation, she felt that everyone was happy with the proposal. Ryan then told Yuhan that she would do everything possible to ensure that the Count satisfied all of Yuhan's conditions. Yuhan was very grateful to Ryan for her help, but Ryan still believed that everyone else would say that Yuhan's request was still a loss for him and his ghouls. The next morning, Yuhan, along with Ryan, the ghouls and the nightly guard, reached Weirdo County. As soon as everyone passed through the gate to Weirdo County, Blog began to feel how all the locals were looking at them. The Blog then reminded Yuhan that Weirdo County was one of those places where discrimination was severe. At this moment, the locals began to actively whisper to each other and tirelessly look at Yuhan and his goblins, which is why the situation became more and more tense every second. The ghouls were extremely unfamiliar with the fact that everyone in the area was paying such attention to them. Then Yuhan told one of the ghouls that they should at least pose a little in public and show off their muscles. Yuhan told the ghouls that they looked great and that was why people couldn't stop looking at them. Then the ghouls thought that they really needed to show everyone their strong muscles. However, the Blog was completely sure that there were other reasons why people kept their eyes on the ghouls. Then the ghouls began to line up in various poses, showing off their muscles to the residents of the county. However, now people looked at the ghouls and began to think about why these ghouls were so happy and why they began to get into these strange positions. A few minutes later, Yuhan, together with Ryan, arrived at the fortress of Count Werdo, where Yuhan told the Count his plans for his training. However, the Count did not understand why Yuhan chose cattle feed as a reward for his training. However, Yuhan explained to Count Werdo that he did not need livestock feed, but the oats contained in this feed, as oats are a key element of a healthy diet. Count Werdo looked at Yuhan and thought that he was some kind of barbarian, since he dared to talk to him so brazenly. Count Werdo told Yuhan that he only allowed Yuhan into his fortress because Ryan personally asked him to make an exception for him. Count Werdo also said that otherwise his guards would simply start firing at Yuhan and his ghouls at the first opportunity. At this point, Ryan bowed to Count Werdo and thanked him for his tolerance. After this, Count Werdo stood up from his throne and ordered Yuhan to quietly conduct his training in the county with his warriors and leave the county. Yuhan then told the Count that after he finished with his government affairs, he could also join his training. After Yuhan and Ryan left the fortress, Count Werdo thought that he needed to try to get rid of Yuhan and his ghouls as soon as possible. After a couple of minutes, Count Werdo began to think that Ryan was so popular among the people that it was difficult for the Count to win the people over to his side. After this, Count Werdo demanded that the order of the Tutela mercenaries be called to him along with their leader. At this moment, the Count thought that Yuhan would bring a lot of problems to the Tutela order, and thanks to this, he would be able to get rid of Yuhan even faster. Soon, Yuhan and the ghouls arrived at one of the training grounds. Yuhan and the ghouls arrived at the training ground, and the mentor of the Tutela order informed his warriors that today Yuhan's soul would be their mentor. The warriors of the Tutela order were unhappy that they would be trained by the current ghoul lord today, which made them believe that Yuhan was just as much of a monster as the ghouls. The mentor of the Tutela order said that he also did not like the current situation, but if any of them disobeyed the order, it would be considered a violation of military regulations. After this, Yuhan introduced himself to the warriors of the Tutela order, and told them that today he would conduct a special training for them. Yuhan also told the warriors of the order that he did not care what they thought about him, after which he ordered all the warriors to fall to the ground and start doing push-ups. At this moment, all the warriors of the order began to look at Blog, and he told the warriors that they just need to comply with Yuhan's demands. After that, Yuhan began to do push-ups, and the ghouls immediately began to repeat his actions. However, the warriors of the order did not comply with Yuhan's demands, and then Yuhan ordered the warriors to start doing push-ups right now. A second later, the Blog, along with the warriors of the order, began to try to start doing push-ups and looked at how the Blog did it. However, one of the warriors of the order did not follow Yuhan's order, and he simply looked at what was happening here, and he found it somewhat funny. This order warrior then told Yuhan that he was not going to follow the orders of a monster like him. The master of the order reminded this warrior that, by order of the commander, they were obliged to carry out all the instructions of Yuhan. The Order warrior told his mentor that he could not believe that his mentor suddenly began to follow Yuhan's orders. Yuhan listened to the words of this Order warrior that the words of a monster like Yuhan could not be on par with the words of the captain of the Night Guard. At this moment, the master of the Order seriously thought about the words of this warrior and began to debate whether he should really follow Yuhan's orders. Meanwhile, this warrior of the Order told the rest of the warriors to stand up and think about the fact that they were following the orders of a monster, and he believed that because of this, the authority of the human race could suffer greatly. The Order's mentor decided to remind his warrior that in the army the order of the commander has absolute force, but Yuhan decided to try to talk to this warrior himself. Then the warrior of the Order told Yuhan that there were several problems, one of which was the fact that people would never follow the orders of monsters. The second problem this warrior of the Order considered was the opinion that there was no point in warriors stopping their fencing training because of bodybuilding, since he believed that fencing was the most effective type of fighting. The last problem this warrior named was the reluctance of people to study the training of monsters like Yuhan and his ghouls. Yuhan wanted to explain his position to the warrior of the Order, but the old ghoul lord insisted that he could independently resolve all the issues that arose. First, the old ghoul lord solved the first problem by appointing Blog as the new trainer of the Order, and since he was a man, the warriors of the Order could carry out all his orders without any problems. Regarding the second problem, the old ghoul lord said that he had not previously compared the practical benefits of fencing and bodybuilding, and therefore it would be difficult to harp on the effectiveness of one or another type of training. Regarding the last question, the old ghoul lord said that in order to find out whether bodybuilding is a barbaric activity, they must definitely arrange a duel between one ghoul and one warrior of the Order. After the proposal for a duel, the old ghoul lord called on one of the ghouls to prepare for the upcoming duel. Then the warrior of the Order agreed to conduct a duel, and he was ready to go into battle on behalf of all the other warriors of the Order against any ghoul. Soon, one ghoul emerged from the crowd of ghouls and was ready to fight the Order warrior for the honor and dignity of his species and Yuhan. At this moment, the warrior of the Order was filled with self-confidence, and he believed that he could easily defeat this ghoul in a matter of seconds. After a couple of seconds, the ghouls and the warrior of the Order prepared for a duel, and the warrior of the Order believed that this ghoul would not be easy to defeat him. The warrior of the Order prepared his sword and almost immediately attacked the ghoul. Meanwhile, the ghoul prepared to repeat the movement of the one-arm press exercise to attack the warrior of the Order. As soon as the Order warrior got close enough, the ghoul immediately hit the Order warrior in the face. The ghoul's blow was strong enough to defeat the warrior of the Order with the first blow. Yuhan felt that the blow from his ghoul was too strong, as this ghoul almost killed this warrior of the Order. Then the ghoul apologized to Yuhan for not being able to calculate the force of his blow, but Yuhan said that he understood that the ghoul did not do this blow out of malice, and he immediately forgave him. After this, Yuhan told the rest of the Order's warriors that since their warrior was defeated, they should now listen to him and follow all his orders during training. While Yuhan was talking with the rest of the Order's warriors, the same warrior with whom one of the ghouls fought a few seconds ago used combat energy, thanks to which this warrior regained consciousness. A second later, this warrior of the Order decided from behind to attack the ghoul who had defeated him a couple of minutes ago. At this moment, the old ghoul lord used his waiting skill to try and stop the Order warrior. Due to the old ghoul lord's skill, the Order's warrior's clothes became 10 times heavier, causing him to be unable to move further. Meanwhile, Yuhan had already walked towards the Order warrior as quickly as possible. As soon as Yuhan was next to this warrior, Yuhan immediately punched him in the stomach. Yuhan's blow turned out to be so powerful that this warrior immediately flew several meters towards one of the walls. A second later, a warrior of the Order crashed into one of the walls, and due to the force of the blow, his silhouette remained in the wall. Ryan soon arrived at the training field to find out how today's training was going. Ryan was almost completely confident that Yuhan's training was going without any problems. However, as soon as Ryan arrived at the training field, she saw a crowd of people gather. People were discussing that at the moment when the warrior of the Order attacked one of the ghouls, Yuhan used magic. Then Ryan called the mentor of the Order to her so that he could explain to her what happened here. The Order's mentor immediately ran to Ryan and told her about how his warriors refused to follow Yuhan's orders, which is why they decided to hold a competition. The mentor also said that one of his fighters lost in the competition, which is why all the other warriors began to suspect the ghouls of dishonestly using magic. Ryan could not believe that Yuhan could allow ghouls to behave like this, and then she decided to ask him if he used magic during the competition. However, Yuhan honestly answered Ryan that during the competition he did not use any magical skills or techniques. After this, Ryan told the Order's mentor that his version of the events taking place here was different from what he had told her. In his defense, the Order's mentor told Ryan that he, too, did not feel the way Yuhan used magic. Huerto arrived at the training field, and he asked the mentor of the Order who he believed, his people or the monsters. Also, Count Huerto said that he was just passing by the training field on his business, and he decided to check how today's training was going. After this, Count Huerto again asked Ryan who he believed, his warriors and the people of the county, or strangers and low-grade monsters. Ryan, without any doubt or hesitation, told Count Huerto that she would always be on her Count's side. Then Count Huerto asked Ryan why she now believes the words of the monsters if she always stands on the Count's side. At this moment Yuhan decided that Count Huerto was done with his state affairs, and then he invited him to join their training. However, the old ghoul lord quickly and clearly explained to Yuhan that Count Huerto did not come here to train. At this point, Count Huerto told Ryan that although he greatly appreciated her and her efforts, he believed that her actions somehow harmed the country. The Count believed that it was because of these monsters that not only one of the Order's warriors suffered, but also that unrest began among the rest of the Order's warriors. Then Count Huerto told Ryan that he could not leave everything as it was, and that he must take appropriate measures. Due to the current situation on the training field, Count Huerto was forced to send Ryan into exile for 2 years. At this moment, Ryan immediately began to look at the Count with her terrifying and cold-blooded gaze, as if she was going to kill the Count right here and right now. Huerto so much that he even began to regret his decision to send Ryan into exile. At this moment, the mentor of the Order, Tutula, and his warriors immediately stood up for Ryan and began to demand that the Count immediately cancel his order for Ryan's further exile. Ryan considered this a unique opportunity to change Count Huerto's mind about Yuhan, and despite all the support from the Order, she immediately told everyone to shut up and listen to her. Ryan told all the warriors of the Order that after they disobeyed the Count's order, they have no right to call themselves warriors. One of the warriors of the Order wanted to say something, but Ryan immediately demanded that all the warriors of the Order listen to her. Ryan told the warriors of the Order that she previously considered them to be ordinary newbies, but now her opinion has completely changed after the warriors of the Order dared to interrupt her. After this, Ryan said that she would indeed have to leave so that the new warriors could fully prove themselves, after which she thanked the Count for his concern. Meanwhile, the Count listened carefully to Ryan and thought about how a minute ago she looked at him as if she wanted to kill him. Afterwards, Ryan apologized to Yuhan because even though she was able to bring him along with the ghouls, she would not be able to continue helping them. However, Yuhan told Ryan that she should not worry about this, since he believed that a person should not follow only one specific course all his life. After this, Ryan asked Count Huerto to continue to host these monsters for 3 months. And Count Huerto said that he would definitely keep his promise, for which Ryan was grateful to the Count. At this moment, Ryan thought that now her plan had begun to take effect, and that now she could only wait for her plan to be fully executed. After that, Ryan left the training field with the thought that when she returned, there would be colossal changes in this county. That evening, a warrior of the Order, who was defeated in a battle with one of the ghouls, was returning home with a bag of money. On the way home, the warrior of the Order thought that very soon he would be able to leave this Order forever and live his own life. On the way home, the warrior of the Order thought that his wife, named Belle, loved flowers very much, and the warrior of the Order thought about opening his own flower shop. After this, the warrior of the Order took out a photograph of his family, and began to think that very soon he would return home and see his daughter. However, at that moment, a terrible catastrophe occurred in one settlement in which this warrior of the Order lived. This settlement was attacked by monsters, and after that the settlement was engulfed in fire. Everything that was happening was watched by one dangerous monster, who was responsible for this incident. While the settlement was engulfed in flames, this monster turned to another monster named Eliza so that she would pay attention to the fact that they had not done anything like this for a long time. Eliza said that their former homeland was welcoming them with joy, after which the monster immediately began to laugh with joy. After a couple of seconds, this monster turned to another monster asking him to dance with him. This monster looked very much like a beautiful princess dressed in a funeral dress. Soon the princess took the monster by the hand and began to dance a ballroom dance with him, admiring the view of the burning settlement and the screams of the local residents. The next morning, Ryan got ready for exile, and the blog got ready with her. Suddenly Ryan became interested in why blog decided to go with her, and then she decided to ask him about it. The blog said that he would not have training with Yuhan today, and Yuhan allowed him to take Ryan on the long journey. Then Ryan decided that it would be nice if they stopped by Yuhan together on the way. But blog was afraid that Count Werdo might find out about their visit to Yuhan. However, Ryan said that she was not so weak and defenseless as to fear displeasure from Count Werdo. Blog decided that if Ryan was so confident in her abilities, then he shouldn't worry about her, and he told her that in that case, he would be happy to take her to Yuhan. Suddenly, Ryan noticed that blog's voice appeared more confident, and blog was pleased to hear this. Ryan also jokingly told blog that if he became even stronger then she might well think about marrying blog. However, blog thought that Ryan was a bit old for him, as he thought that Ryan was around 60 years old, while blog was only in her early 20s. The topic of age really hurt Ryan, and she decided to teach blog a lesson, and then blog began to run away from Ryan, while Raper and Hender tried to hold Ryan so that blog could escape. Meanwhile, the ghouls began to actively hunt slugs throughout the forest. Slugs were very slippery and slimy creatures, and the ghouls put a lot of effort into not accidentally letting the caught slugs slip away. Yuhan sent ghouls to catch slugs for new exercises during training, and the ghouls tried to bring as many slugs as possible to Yuhan. At that moment, the ghouls met Ryan and Bloga, and Ryan became interested in why the ghouls suddenly started catching slugs. The ghouls were happy to see Ryan and Blog, however, they did not expect to see Blog so far from the county, since they knew that Blog had originally only planned to carry out Ryan. Then the Blog decided to explain to the ghouls that on the way they decided to visit Yuhan together. After Blog explained everything to the ghouls, Ryan again asked the ghouls why they were catching slugs. Then one of the ghouls told Ryan that Yuhan suddenly needed a lot of slugs. However, Ryan did not understand how Yuhan decided to use slugs, since in this world, slugs had no practical use, and therefore even people did not hunt them. The ghouls could not explain exactly why they needed ghouls, and then they invited Ryan and Blog to go with them so that they could see everything with their own eyes and understand everything themselves. At this moment, Ryan felt that Yuhan had not explained to the ghouls at all why they were catching slugs, and the ghouls said that it would be very difficult to explain. Then the Blog told Ryan that it would actually be better for them to go with the ghouls, since the ghouls did not at all know how to correctly formulate their thoughts. Ryan decided that it would actually be better for her and Blog to go after the ghouls. After some time, Ryan and Blog finally reached the place where Yuhan was currently located. Yuhan greeted Ryan and Bloga, thinking that they could get to this place with lunging steps to train their legs along the way. Ryan told Yuhan that before going into exile, she decided to visit Yuhan, and at the same time she wondered what Yuhan was doing now. Meanwhile, the rest of the ghouls tried to group the captured slugs into a pile using their pectoral claws. Soon Ryan noticed how the ghouls were collecting slugs in one pile, and she decided to ask Yuhan why he suddenly needed all these slugs. Then Yuhan said that he noticed that bodybuilding-related training would be especially effective for the warriors of the order. Then Yuhan decided that in this case he could conduct group training, but he did not have enough equipment, and he decided to make simulators from scrap materials. At this moment, Ryan believed that Yuhan had decided to use the slugs as a dummy that could be quickly cut with his hands. However, Yuhan told Ryan that it would look a little different, after which he asked the ghouls to bring him any slug. When one of the ghouls brought Yuhan one slug, Yuhan showed Ryan that the first thing to do was to sharply thrust his hand inside the slug. After that, Yuhan took out a small ball from the slug and said that if you take out this piece of slug intact and unharmed, then over time a new slug will form around this ball. Yuhan believed that in order not to catch new slugs, you can leave this ball and wait for the slug to recover again.